by now you have probably seen all of the controversy about The Game of Wool, Britain's Best Knitter, and it was a reality TV show from Channel 4 in the UK. While I was working on this sock, particularly last night, I had a lot of ideas on how to fix this. How can I give them constructive feedback on how to make The Game of Wool better for both knitters, the viewers, and the overall outcome on actually finding Britain's best knitter.
Stitch is gonna stitch, we don't miss a loop. Pull that thread tight, join the crochet troop.
If this is our first time hanging out, hi, my name is Holly, and you are joining me inside my Northeast Ohio home in the United States, working on the Zigzagular sock with Floramania yarn that was in my stash. It has long been discontinued. I hope Regia Schachemeier brings this back because actually I would love to see this in a worsted weight as well, because this is a fantastically fun wool to work with, and this sock has just been so delightful to see all the color changes. And with that out of the way, I had to set that down because if I try to stitch and talk at the same time, I don't know what my problem is. Even on a stockinette side, I'm probably going to make a mistake somehow, because that's what I do. So last night I jotted down so many notes on how we could make The Game of Wool so much better for season 2, for the contestants, for the hosts, and for the viewer. Because at the end of the day, without viewers, there's no show. And if all we're gonna do is bitch and complain about what we didn't like about it, that's not gonna go anywhere, and it's not going to achieve what we want, which is promoting the knitting and crochet and yarn and wool community instead of just bashing the hell out of this TV show that was in its first season and was most likely going to have issues. The first suggestion I have is I'm personally not a huge fan of group challenges, and maybe those could still be sprinkled in throughout the show, but what I would probably tend to want to do instead is having little mini swatch-sized challenges, something that could be completed in 1 to 2 hours depending on what the swatch challenge is. And you could even add a little bit of a layer of fun to this by whoever does the best in this swatch-sized challenge could get some sort of an advantage, or maybe put someone in the competition at a disadvantage. And so some of the swatch size challenges that I came up with in my mind are going to be mending a damaged piece, so maybe a holey sock or something like that, finding and fixing a mistake in a knitted piece, patching a hole in jeans with knit or crochet, embroidering over a knit, so like maybe adding just a little bit of extra fun to a knit piece, blocking, so maybe everyone is given both a very rigid piece, meaning it needs to be super crispy, and one is an irregular shape, and that they have to spend 1 to 2 hours blocking it. So probably an hour a piece, and then it's dried, and then the piece is inspected. So it gives that extra little bit of, do you actually know how to finish a knitted piece properly? Because to me, that would be incredibly important if I was looking for Britain's best knitter. I would also maybe give them a small project, such as a bookmark, and have them write the pattern just by being able to inspect that piece. One could be that you have to teach a 2-hour begin to knit class. Another challenge I thought would be fun and bite-sized is to have a small chart that is given to all the knitters, and there is no legend and little to no written context in the instructions, and it's up to the knitter to interpret what all the symbols mean and what they end up producing with the chart, whether they just do a swatch or if they want to turn it into something, you know, like a dish rag or a small bag or something like that. There could be some master classes as well in there, so specialty cast on and bind off techniques. You could have a master class in spinning, and then they would have a choice between doing the drop spindle or the spinning wheel, because there's pros and cons to both, and I could see both of those going horrendously wrong because I've tried both. And it's not as easy as it seems. Also giving them a project that a ton of ends are left out and they just need to be woven in properly, not just that they need to be crocheted over or knit over. There is actually proper technique in weaving in ends for both knitting and crocheting, and I think that would be fun to have that really judged at that granular level, especially if you are Britain's best knitter. And finally, I would say possibly jogless stripes. And I don't know if that would include a masterclass on the different ways you could do a jogless stripe, or if they would just have to know that on their own. I think that would be really fun because we don't like seeing, if you don't know what a jog is in a stripe, so knitting in the round isn't like row to row. It actually will go like this. So pretend this is your stripe. It is the illusion that these are on the same level when you go to change colors. So I think that would be really fun to see. It's a lot easier in my mind to not hide, but the technique in crochet is so much easier than in knitting, so I think that would be really fun to see. When I think about the different types of advantages that someone could earn is that maybe they get an extra, I don't know, certain amount of time in their knitting or their crochet pieces, or they get first yarn selection, or they're the only ones that can work with a particular yarn type, color. Maybe they get to pick the model, because I feel like if you're Britain's best knitter, when you get to some of these bigger challenges, you might not necessarily want to do an extra small sweater. Well, okay, that's what they want to do because that's the fastest, but I think it would be interesting to have different shapes and sizes and be able to tailor a sweater to different shapes and sizes. And those challenging shapes, what if someone's short but really busty? That's not an easy thing to tailor, but if you're Britain's best knitter, you should probably know how to do that. Also, I did really enjoy, there was a kids challenge where all of the knitters made crochet costumes, or well, some of them were knit and some of them were crocheted, but they made costumes for children. And I thought it might actually be fun if the children decided what they wanted as the costume, but then whoever won the swatch challenge got to decide who gets which child in which costume, because that would just, to me, add a super layer of fun. Maybe the contestants would get the ones that they really want. Maybe they wouldn't. I don't know. That's part of how I would probably spice it up a little bit. For the bigger challenges, I feel like there were so many techniques and things that really got glossed over because they had these like 10 and 12 hour time windows. I feel like if they went the route of Project Runway and allowed people like 2 to 3 days on the bigger projects, or even longer than that, because we know knitting is a slow craft. And I feel like even audience would understand that. And I think it would actually be important for the audience to understand that this is a slow craft, because this is how a lot of times if someone wants a custom piece, they get undercut a lot and they say that's way too expensive. But if you understand the amount of time and work and effort that goes into it, this is a way that the Game of Wool could paint that narrative and help us knitters and crocheters bring that message to the general public. I think by having longer time frames, that would be super helpful. And also it would help them produce their best work and allow for a little bit of error if something goes wrong or you have to rip something out and re-knit it, anything like that. And also you could show off way more techniques. The first challenge in my mind that came to mind is that if everyone had to knit a Kitman Figueroa shawl and it was fully beaded, Kitman Figueroa's patterns are known to be highly, highly detailed, textured, cabled, beaded, all of the things, and in a sock weight yarn, which is an incredibly thin yarn. So I thought that would be a really wow challenge. And I don't know if I would necessarily have them all knit the same one, or if they got to pick from a selection of her patterns. And she's not the only one. There are other highly, highly just technical shawl patterns out there, but I thought that would be just an idea that could be really interesting to see what you can produce with knitting, given a little bit more time to produce those. And even myself, I actually knit a Kitman Figueroa shawl in probably about a week. And it was at a time when I wasn't working, so I was working on it all the time. And even then I remembered it being a lot on my hands. So I do feel like I know this would extend the amount that there's going to be in filming and production and everything. I just really think that this would be a great message and a way to show off what knitting can be. Then of course, I do feel like Britain's best knitter, if that's what they want to lean into, should know some amount of crochet. So there could be a crochet week. There could also be things like take a Petite Knits pattern and you have to alter it in some way and add some interesting design element to elevate it and make it more fun, interesting, and unique. Because Petite Knits is known for relatively simple, wearable, almost commercial looking kinds of patterns. And I think this would be a good way where you have to know the basics and it would show off how even your tension is or is not, but then still give you that element of they have to add a little something to make it interesting. I would say also knitting a magazine pattern with minimal details from the 90s or early 2000s, because Anytime I see anyone say this pattern is poorly written and there's not a whole lot of detail or instruction, I kind of want to laugh a little bit, because you clearly were not knitting in the 90s and 2000, early 2000s, when like it was bare bones patterns for the most part, not just in magazines. I think Drops patterns were also very known for being minimal. They might still be. I haven't actually looked at one in a while. Similar, I did say knit a plus size sweater that's well fitting. This is oversized, so I'm not even going to pretend that I fit this well to me, but that would maybe be part of that like challenging body types to fit thing that I mentioned earlier. We could do brioche, we could do cabling, we could do lace week. I thought that was interesting that they did have a week of texture, and really all we saw were cables. I'm trying to think what else. There were some waffle type stitches, things like that, but yeah, there was a little bit of lace. I didn't see any brioche or half fisherman's rib or fisherman's rib, which I know those do take longer. And again, that's why I'm suggesting if they had more time to work on these things, you could really create some wow pieces out of these. And then for color work, I think they could have opened this up a little bit more into not just the Fair Isle technique. And we only saw, I think Holger made just a traditional Fair Isle. When I say Fair Isle technique, it's stranded color work where you're holding more than one color in your hands and, you know, creating some sort of a design. Fair Isle technically, specifically, is its own niche under color work, I guess. We did see some intarsia, so that was cool. The only mosaic I remember seeing was, I want to say it was Lydia's jewelry piece in the neck, the choker part of it. So I thought that might be fun if that was a little bit more pronounced. The other thing I thought was a little bit lackluster in the Game of Wool is at the end of it, they are so proud of these golden knitting needles as their trophy prize. And don't get me wrong, it was really cool in a way. And I was like, okay, well, I've also seen, I think there was just one glimpse of Wool and the Gang on a ball band in one of the shots throughout the season. If there were any more, I totally missed them. I'm not even going to lie. And I really thought they would get some sort of like shopping spree with Wool and the Gang or any kind of, you know, major yarn distributor in Europe. And I was sadly mistaken. So I feel like they went through all this, all the misery, the tears, the upset, the reworking things that didn't work, feeling disappointed in themselves and frustrated. And then at the end of it, I was really disappointed that that's all the prize was. And maybe that's the American in me thinking, like, not to say it has to be like $500,000 or $100,000, but I really would have thought it would have been something that the knitters and crocheters could have put towards like their stash, notions, literally anything that we love to use in our fiber arts, yarn arts lives. So those are just some thoughts on how we could fix the Game of Wool. So if anyone from Channel 4 is listening and you want me to refine any of these, feel free to reach out to me. Although I suspect you're never going to hear who I am and never see any of this, but that would be super cool. I did actually find the channel of at least one of the contestants. I'm hoping she will want to do like a live stream or some sort of interview here on the channel. I'm not going to say which one. I don't want to put that kind of pressure on a contestant that might just be like, I'm kind of done and need to relax, because that's also completely fine. If you have any other ideas on how you would fix the Game of Wool, any adjustments, anything I did not think of in all of the swatch challenges, or if you do like the group challenges and you disagree with me, I would love to hear it. Some of them were successful and they were interesting to see. I think I just have a problem working in groups, and that's just a problem I have because we all went to school. We know, even if you didn't go to college, you went to school and probably at some point it had to work in a group that was a train wreck. So I cannot wait to hear your thoughts on the Game of Wool, how to make season 2 better. And as always, I can't wait to visit with you in the next one. And if you missed my video ranting about the Game of Wool, you can check it out right here, and I can't wait to see you over there. Bye.